now, or was it more clear before? Can you hear me now, or was it more clear before?
I hear you now. I hear you now.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Sorry about that. I was trying to set it up. Oh, is my thing on? There we go.
All right, cool. Okay, we'll get started now.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to set up the
Don't
Zoom
worry
on my
about it.
iPad. My iPad just wasn't cooperating.
No, don't worry about it. So, right, everybody. Welcome to Nuiaa Law Association's 2021 Law Panel. My name is Nuiaa. I'm wrapping up my sophomore year at Muhlenberg College. I'm currently in the pre-medicine track, majoring in public health. And today I'm honored to be moderating three of our wonderful alum panelists for our law panel today. I'll let them introduce themselves in a few moments, but just a quick note to the audience members. We'll be having 5 topic blocks today throughout our panel session. They will be their panelists' high school passions, undergraduate life, LSAT and applications, law school experiences in their education, and post-law school goals. So again, please feel free, this is a note to the audience. You are the star of the show. Please make sure to put your questions in the chat and direct them to the panelists, as you should be leading this event. And I'll go ahead and pass the mic to the panelists. You may introduce yourselves, what year you graduated from NUI, where you are currently in your law field career journey, and anything you'd like to share with the audience members.
I'll go first, I guess. Salam, everyone. I'm Saba. I graduated from Nuiaa Law in 2012, and then I graduated from Rutgers University in 2016, and I'm currently a 3L. I'm in my last year of law school, and I will be graduating in May, inshallah.
My name is Hamza. I graduated from NUI in 2011, which is crazy to think was a whole 10 years ago. Back then, NUI didn't have a school building or anything like that. It was 3 little trailers that are still in the parking lot. I graduated from law school last May when this whole coronavirus pandemic had just started. And right now I'm working as a first-year associate at a law firm in Newark, New Jersey.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhammad. I graduated at NUI in 2014. So I did have the new school for a few years, alhamdulillah. And then I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, and I studied civil engineering with a minor in political science. And I graduated in 2018. And then I went straight through, and I'm currently at Villanova University School of Law, and I'm in my 3rd year as well. So inshallah, I graduate in almost a month and a half, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure it's great.
Is your graduation in person?
Yeah. It's we actually have 2 guests allowed, so alhamdulillah, like I'm pretty excited. Nice. Yeah. So it's be a good time. We've been in person all year, so it's
no way.
Yeah. We've had classes like hybrid, but in person as well.
Okay. That's pretty neat.
It's so crazy to think how fast time flies, especially with all this like schooling, and year after year you're occupied with something else and something new, and before you know it, you're like, wow, like the good old NUI high school days. But I am going to ask you to time travel backwards to your NUI high school days, whatever that might look like, and just share with the audience what was going through your mind at that time. Do you have any other career interests? Were you steadfast on pursuing law, and were there any experiences that were life-changing or I guess motivating for you to continue in the field of law?
Okay, I guess I can go first. So I was back when I was in high school, I wasn't thinking too far ahead about what my career would be. I was pre-med, kind of almost by default. I at the time I'd shadowed a couple of doctors. I really liked it. I was like, you know what, this is just what I'm going to this is just what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I went into college. I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, and I went in as pre-med. I took all the pre-med classes, but I had never really considered all the different options of career, like different career options out there. Law was never a career that had even really crossed my mind until I got to college. It was always kind of the more, I guess, established career paths in our community, just like, you know, you can be a doctor, or you can be an engineer, or you can be a doctor, or you can be an engineer. Um, so it wasn't something I considered until I got to college. In college, I got involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. I think what I give the most credit to for my switch to law was my involvement with the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter at Rutgers. And through the course of that, I met a lot of attorneys. I saw the world in a different light. I saw all the changes that attorneys could bring, all the power that basically lawyers as a collective have. And I found that my interests and my skills and my passions were very much better aligned with being an attorney than being a doctor. That, in addition to, I didn't, as a pre-med student, I had been counseled by this older man I knew to not just study sciences. So I was on the pre-med track. I also had I was also an economics minor, and all my economics classes really fascinated me. So I think a little whirlwind of that in my senior year, while I was studying for the entrance exams, literally probably like a week away, I had a moment where I was like, you know what, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? So I prayed a lot of istikhara. It was my spring break of my senior year. I prayed a lot of istikhara. A friend of mine was on Umrah. I asked him to pray for me, and literally within a couple of days, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna switch to law school. I think the decision was 4 years late. I always say it took 4 years for my mind to catch up with my heart. A lot of my friends, a lot of my parents, everyone had been saying, oh, you know, you should consider this. But after I made that decision, it was the best decision that I ever made. I haven't looked back since. I've enjoyed every single moment of law school, every single moment of post law school. And yeah, it's a little bit of an unconventional journey, I think, which is why I don't know if I should have gone first, but.
I guess I can go next. And I think I also have an unconventional route. And you'll find a lot of people who end up in law school do not have a conventional route. I think a lot of times people think, oh, if you're in high school and you're a mock trial, like that's it. Like those are the people that go to law school. And I did mock trial for a year in high school. I was involved in like Model UN. And I think this is more focused to high school. So like Hamza, I wasn't 100%, focused on the long-term future. And I think a lot of high schoolers are pressured into, okay, what are you going to do when you get to college? And law school is like a step after that. So it's kind of like not thought about right after high school. So I guess my biggest, one of the things I'm happy that I did was I kind of opened myself up to a lot of different stuff in high school, because right when I got to college and I was in engineering, everything was, my classes took so much time. I didn't really have enough time to really take other classes outside of the engineering field of study. So if you're in high school, I 100% recommend just, don't be afraid to join something that you might not know if you like it or not. Just try and get involved in like different, clubs on at school, and really just open your be open-minded to whatever comes up. And the Nuiaa Man has a lot of different organizations, so there's a wide net. And even outside of that, if you find yourself like interested in what's going on in the world, and a lot of politicians, and there's just, the legal field is so wide that it doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, mock trial is what my vision of being a lawyer is. So that's kind of what I did in high school, and we'll talk more about college and the next steps, but
Yeah, high school was really hard, I found, and I still think high school was really hard. Like, obviously college and law school are difficult, but you have so much going on in high school, and you're also trying to figure out like why you're doing, why you have to take all these classes, what you want to do. I think in high school I was doing like a lot of different things. I also wasn't really totally sure what I was going to do. Again, it was kind of like by default, I'll probably go to medical school because, I won't bore you with those details. You all are probably very familiar with that like line of thinking. But in high school, I was doing, I did mock trial for like all 4 years of high school. And I did Model UN and Model Congress and, the Quran class after school every day. Like there was just a lot happening. And so I think I was like, not really being intentional about like, what do I want my future to look like? Also because it didn't feel like that was something you could even, like you had so much control over. It was just like, well, these are the things that you can do. So for now, I'll just, focus on trying to get my good grades or whatever. So I think one thing that and I don't know if I would like recommend, if you're in high school right now, it's a lot to say, think about what you want your future to look like. And it's okay if you don't think about it, I think, like in very specific terms, like if you don't necessarily have like an exact idea of like whether you'll be, and we're not going to limit it to pre-med, pre-engineering, pre-law, but you don't even have to limit yourself to that. Just like maybe think about like, do you like what skills are you good at? Like, do you like reading? Do you like writing? Do you like the maths and sciences? And for me, like I never liked math and science, but for some reason I still felt like I was going to be a doctor. And I think that's just like a really, it's an example of just how you aren't really thinking about like what you're doing so much. Like it just first, like, looking at it now, it's like, obviously it didn't make any sense for me to be like thinking about medical school when I was like enjoying mock trial, for example, and like doing well at that kind of thing. But it's just, high school is a very strange time, I think, to think about such big, future steps. And that's okay, but it is important to branch out, like Muhammad was just saying, and to do as much as you can, because you are kind of exploring and trying to figure out like what you're good at and what you enjoy. So yeah, for the high school level, I would definitely just recommend knowing like what your limits are and not overcommitting, because it's hard work and you do need to do well, whatever it is that you're doing, but also to be open-minded and like, maybe try something. Even if you don't commit to it, maybe just try something and see if it's like, maybe go to one Model UN conference and see if it's something that you enjoy.
Absolutely, those are all great points. I mean, you guys all like nailed it on the head. In high school, it's super easy to get overwhelmed with everything. You enjoy everything you do, and of course, NUI students are always committed to their extracurricular activities. So it's sometimes hard to really hone in on what your passions are, because you might be telling yourself, hey, I want to pursue this, but years down the line in college, for example, there'll be so many, doors that'll be opened up for you. And again, you never know where life's going to take you. So you just try your best and, focus on what you can control, and whatever you can't control, just leave the rest to Allah to figure out. But yeah, I guess we'll transition to the undergraduate life. A huge part of course, like any pre-professional journey. Talk a little bit about your pre-law journey, why you chose to major or minor in what you did or chose, and any extracurricular activities that you participated in college that you think really honed in on your skills in your application, for example.
I guess I can start for this one. So like I said before, I started in the School of Engineering. I studied civil engineering, and the course load was very difficult for me to take any classes outside of engineering, mainly because you start out taking like calc, chem, physics, all in your first year at the same time with statics and other classes. So for me, the time where I was able to kind of branch out was, in the extracurricular activities that I joined in. Alhamdulillah, I stumbled upon, Engineering Governing Council, which led me to, student government. And you know, it was just, I guess, keeping an open mind and slowly joining organizations. You know, there are a bunch of organizations that I I showed up to at the first day and I never went back to, right? And there's some organizations that I stuck with all 4 years. One of them was also the IDIA, IDEA, which is like the Model United Nations conferences they host for the high school students. And I just realized slowly that all the extracurricular activities that I was doing had nothing to do with engineering. Most of them were either student government, you know, worked with Hamza a lot in college and got advice from him as a freshman when I was a first year student, and just like realized that I slowly did not really have the passion for like bridge building and like, you know, the cool events they had in engineering. Like I liked it, but for some reason I never really participated in it. And I felt that that natural tendency was pushing me somewhere. And for some reason, I didn't notice it until, you know, in my sophomore year, I got an internship working with Congressman Frank Pallone. And it was, you know, I wouldn't say life changing, but it was an amazing experience. I got to work, you know, right next to him and his campaign staff who are all like incredibly motivated and inspirational. And they taught me a lot about, you know, just about campaigns. And from that point on, I slowly met more and more people in the political realm that a lot of them were attorneys. I also got the privilege to work under County Commissioner County Commissioner Nara, and she's an attorney. And we talked a lot about, you know, the legal field. And she would always push me. She said, "Listen, Mohammed, if you like doing a lot of this like political governmental work, why not go to law school?" And I was like, you know, you're kind of right. Like, yeah, I don't know why not. And especially after like in my junior year of engineering, that's when you start taking like your specific civil engineering classes. And that's when I realized, why not, you know, I can pivot. I still like engineering. Yeah, I enjoyed my classes, especially in my last 2 years, but I can pivot. And in the legal community, you can do engineering specific topics like construction law or real estate law or land use. And there's just a wide variety of topics that cover both engineering and law. So in my junior year, I kind of got stuck and I just didn't know what to do. And I think a lot of people who are interested in law just don't know what to do or like what steps to take. You don't need to major in anything. You just need to have like a bachelor's. You don't need to be, it's not like pre-med where you have to take orgo, chem, bio, and you have to take them all at the school, and you can't take them at a community college, and all this like extra stuff that med school has, law school doesn't have. You just need a GPA and LSAT at the end of the day. And I didn't know that, right? And it was like a process, you know, thankfully I had people like Hamza and Saba and other people who like really guided me through the process. And that helped me, but at the same time, I had to find other ways. I joined Phi Alpha Delta, which is a pre-law fraternity on campus, which was like professional in the sense that they would give us, here's like the test masters, here's the other classes that you can take to study for LSATs. And it just gave a wide variety of resources that we never had, or I never felt like I had, and it wasn't readily available in our community. So from that point on, you know, I studied for my LSATs in my junior year. I took it by the end of junior year in Ramadan. I remember it was like June 12th, and then I retook it again in my senior year, in the fall of my senior year, and I applied by like early November. And alhamdulillah, I had a lot of people like guide me through the process, but the timing is very important. Like people told me, make sure you apply early so you get more scholarship money. That is very like that's not like a myth. It's very factual. Just because they run, if you have a certain amount of spots and people apply early and you give them money and they accept to come to your school, you don't have that money anymore to give, and each school has a limited amount of money. So that was my path in undergrad, from starting from like my first year all the way to my senior year. Right when as I graduated, I graduated in 2018. I started law school the same year. So that's my path.
So yeah, I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick as well. which was such a good decision. I think like I'm so grateful that I went to Rutgers for so many reasons, from like, being able to just having like such a broad array of options for academics, and to the people that I met there, and just like the network that I still have from going to Rutgers. Like, just not to plug Rutgers, but like it was a really great experience overall. Like I said, I was pre-med originally, so I had two majors as public health major and a political science major, and I minored in Arabic. I, like Mohammed said, you don't have to major in anything for law school. And if I had known that, I would not have majored in those things. I would have probably majored in like history. And so I definitely recommend that the first thing when you're thinking about what to major in, if you already know that you want to go to law school, then major in whatever you want. As long as you know that you can do well, that's like the most important thing. But I had just taken so many science classes in college already, because I was thinking about pre-med, so the public health made sense. And political science, like it just seemed like you had to do political science, or like you should do political science if you wanted to go to law school. Again, like didn't really know a lot about it, didn't know that there were no requirements, and so it just felt like this made sense. But I also took a lot of other classes, like even outside of your majors, you can take like random electives, and that's why when I think about it now, like I really liked my history classes, and I kind of wish I had majored in that. But yeah, extracurriculars were a pretty big thing for me in college as well. The biggest thing I did was I worked for the Daily Targum, which is Rutgers like student newspaper for all 4 years of college, and that was I think probably like a really defining like extracurricular for me, because it was like a student-run daily newspaper. I was there every single day, like writing articles every single day, and I really loved it. And I really actually was considering maybe a career in journalism because of that. And when it came to the end of college, I actually applied to graduate school for journalism, and I also applied to jobs. And that was kind of where, it's hard to talk about. I guess I'll try and go in order, but yeah, I did that in college. And then I also did other extracurriculars. I did a lot of them, like Eagleton Institute of Politics, which was, sort of for my political science major. I did a lot of like research projects for professors. That's something that you can definitely do in college. If you like take a class and you like the professor, you can, just get to know them and like apply if they have any openings. I think that's a really cool thing to do outside of your classes. Again, just like branching out, I think is important into whatever your interests are. I also, on campus was involved with like the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, and Rutgers has a huge Muslim student association. So I wasn't super involved with the actual MSA, but there are a lot of Muslims on campus, and in terms of there's just like a lot of ways to make your friends that way. Yeah, when it came to the end of college and deciding what to do, I didn't go straight through to law school. So like I said, I applied to graduate school, and I got into a few programs, and I also got the job. I was kind of applying to everything. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had decided so late that I wanted to do law school that I felt like I needed a little bit more time. And so, weighing all my options, at the end of college, I decided to go and work for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which was, basically working as a paralegal to try and see like, is law what I really want to do? And I'm really glad I did that, because it helped me, I think, to get through the final push to apply to law school. But in terms of like a big moment where I realized that law was what I wanted to do, I don't really think I had one. It was just the way that college went for me, like the things that I enjoyed both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, and the skills that I was working on. Everything just sort of fell into place, I think, as I went along. And again, like by my senior year of college, I still wasn't even sure 100%, like, am I going to go to law school, or am I going to like become a journalist or whatever? But I think I'm a very big picture person. So that was hard for me, because I wanted to like know what was going to happen next and what was going to happen after that. But I think it is really important to just like look at what you're doing and like do the best that you can at it, and like see whatever opportunities come up and just take them. I definitely said yes to a lot of opportunities, that maybe made me very overwhelmed at some points, but like was very worth it, you know, for me to like explore new things that I just had never been exposed to in high school.
Okay, so I realized I overreached a little bit in the last answer. I brushed over this question a little bit. I like I said earlier, I went to law school. I mean, I went to medical. Sorry, I went to to undergrad, pre-med. That was a thought that I had in my head. I was committed to the thought of being a doctor. I like Saba said, I didn't really enjoy the sciences. I wasn't particularly good at math. I remember in high school, like all of my friends were a lot better at math than I was, and I was like, oh, we're all just going to med school. It doesn't really matter. But when I got to undergrad, I took like Oscar said, like all the like your first year is very tough, right? You take bio or chem, or both, calc, expos. I don't remember what else, but it was a difficult year. And I went through it. I was commuting from Lawrenceville to New Brunswick. It was I didn't really branch out much my first year. I was just doing the classes. Wasn't really enjoying them. To be honest, my heart wasn't really in it. In my second year, I made a very conscious decision to say, you know what, I want to get out more. I want to get more involved in the extracurricular activities at Rutgers. So, like they said earlier, Rutgers has a very big Muslim community. There's a lot going on. So I joined the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter, and I think that really changed a lot for me. Like I said, it changed my view of the world. Through that, I met a lot of people who continue to be my mentors and friends who I rely on for advice. Who some of whom went on to become lawyers. But that's kind of where I got the idea of being a lawyer is a possibility. And at the same time, I had as I was getting involved in that. So Students for Justice in Palestine, for those who don't know, is a solidarity organization which works in solidarity with the civil society of Palestine. So what we would do is basically raise awareness for the issues on campus and the surrounding areas. We would work with the administration on various issues, and we worked in coalitions with many other organizations, right, for accomplishing like-minded goals. We worked a lot with the Palestine Children's Relief Fund that Saba mentioned. That was an amazing organization. We worked closely with the student government, as Muhammad was talking about, and it was basically all the people that I met through the work I was doing for SJP was kind of gave me a new perspective on this whole field. I realized that I didn't love medicine. I didn't love the classes that I was taking. So I actually transitioned out of pre-med into pre-dental because I said I realized that if you're a physician, you don't really have time to devote to any other interest outside of your work. And so I figured that as a dentist, dentists usually work. I shadowed a dentist, or I work as a dental assistant in college, and from what I saw from him was he basically worked almost a part-time schedule, and he had a lot of time for his interest and passion. So I figured, you know what, this is a way to split the baby a little bit. I'll be nothing really changes in terms of the classes and the requirements for med school, but you have time to actually pursue your other interests. And then I went through, and 2 years later, that's why I told you guys I had this real epiphany moment during that spring break. And I've relied on a lot of people for their advice, the relationships you make starting in high school, but going into college as well. They're very, I think we tend to overlook them in the moment, especially when you're at that age, but those relationships are lifelong relationships. When I got to the point where I wanted to go to law school, I had older people to look up to. Just Abdurrahman Khan, who didn't go to NUI, but he was he was a mentor figure for me. I think Saba knows him very well. Mohammed knows him very well. He was a big inspiration to me. From NUI, Ibrahim Ahmed was in law school at the time. I don't know if you guys know him. He was a little bit of a mentor for me too. So just relying on those kind of people, getting their advice, it was very big for me making that switch. And once I finally did, I took a break between law school and undergrad, where I worked locally, and then I worked on the Hill. I worked for Congressman Keith Ellison. And in the time, I've met a lot of different types of attorneys, and it really solidified my decision to want to go to law school. And I think, like I said, there's so many different types of law you can pursue, and there's so many different ways you can make an impact on the world around you. And I really realized that this was the best decision for me, for what I wanted to do, for I think what I was good at. For example, I was always a good writer, right? I talked about I wasn't good at the sciences. I was always a good writer. I was very good at language and reading comprehension, things like that. I was one of those kids with high verbal SAT scores and low SAT math scores. So I kind of found my crowd, basically.
I guess we could talk a little bit about beyond your specific academic goals in college, just in terms of advice for the high school students. How was your overall transition from high school academics and work to college classes and overloading yourself and joining extracurricular activities, being around with all that stuff, possibly having imposter syndrome and all that jazz?
That's very real. And the transition is very difficult. Again, loved Rutgers, but it's a huge place, physically and just as an institution. It's enormous, and there's so many people and there's so many options. And we at least when I was at Nuiaa Law Panel, we had we had a lot of opportunities, but they were kind of cut out for you, and you could pretty much do everything and manage. Whereas when you go to college, there's just an unlimited amount of opportunities, and you actually really have to consciously decide what am I going to spend my time on, and what am I going to pass over. So the transition, the first year, my first year kind of sounds like what Hamza went through his first year. It was very hard, and it was very lonely, because it's just a very different sort of schedule. I had a really weird schedule where I had night classes. I didn't realize in my first year that you could change your schedule. So I just had this very weird thing where I had hours and hours of free time. And it's very hard to structure your time. When you're not, the first semester of college, I didn't get involved in any extracurriculars or anything like that, right off the bat, because I also was taking biology and chemistry and calc. So, and you're kind of left to your own devices. In high school, you have somebody telling you you have this homework assignment due, or you have to do this. Whereas in college, it's just you get a syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and it has all of your your due dates, and you just need to make sure you get them done. But other than that, you're just left to your own devices. So it was definitely, there's a period of time that you do need to adjust, and that's okay. It's feels very chaotic, but there's not really a blueprint or a cookie cutter way to get through that, because you have to figure out what your study skills are, how you learn, how you study, how you structure your time. And I think that first year of college, just being not being super involved with things, and just having these classes with a lot more free time than I had in high school. Because again, in college, you're taking 4 classes, maybe, or 5 classes. So you actually have a lot of gaps in your schedule where you're supposed to be studying. But, for me, in my first year of college, I just wasn't familiar with the concept of 6 hours of just doing work. So one way that for me that worked was filling that time with structured things, like getting a job, or, joining a club or something, so that you can break things up. Because for me, having more things in my schedule just makes it easier for me to plug in study time without feeling just oh, I have 10 hours to study. Obviously you're not going to sit there and study for 10 hours, but if you can break things up, for me, how it worked was if I could break things up, it made it a little bit easier. So it's a lot of trial and error. And it can be, I think, a good, like I made like one good friend that could be my study buddy. Like she wasn't really in my, like, we didn't have the same major or anything, but she was just someone who you could be like your accountability person, where like if you are studying together, like at the library or something, it's just helpful to have another person there to be like, all right, we're going to spend the next like 2 hours doing the readings for this, whatever class you have. And then, so, you know, small things like that make a difference. But it is like, you know, to be honest, like very daunting when you first start out. But that is very normal, I think, and it passes. And even if you have a hard time, you know, right off the bat adjusting, it's kind of, I kind of felt like the freshman year of college is like meant to be kind of transitionary or like an adjustment period. Like it's kind of forgiving in the sense that like, if you bomb your first year, like it'll be okay in college, not in law school. We'll talk about that later, but like in college, you have a little bit of a grace period where it's okay if you just take a little bit of time to like figure out what you're taking and how to do well. So that's definitely like a nice thing, I think. So my advice, I guess, for your transition period is to like be very introspective, which is kind of, again, new, I think, out of high school, and like pay attention to how you learn and how you study and like what you personally need, because it's going to be different for everyone. And like, you know, try different things and try and figure it out in that first year, because that's when you have the time to like get on your feet.
So, alhamdulillah, I'll say that before I begin, that the biggest advice that I got coming out of high school, coming into college, was, you know, look out for who you're friends with and make sure you make the right friends. And you hear that a lot, but that is so much more important than what they tell you. Like, everyone will tell you, your parents will tell you, your friends will tell you, but like, if it wasn't for my friends that I met, you know, alhamdulillah, I got very lucky and I'm very blessed that I met really good, you know, friends in my first year of college. If I didn't meet them, you know, it would have been a much more difficult path for me. We studied together. We went to MSA events together. We went to different events like on campus together, and we held each other accountable to you know, sit down. Oh, we have a physics quiz tomorrow, or you know, we have this, you know, calc exam. And the biggest transition between Nuiaa to Rutgers is just the sheer size and the fact that no one is looking out for you anymore. And I'm not saying that you're just a number at Rutgers, because at the end of the day, Rutgers does what they can with 40,000 students. And, you know, it's a great institution and they have the resources, but you're an adult at Rutgers. You're not a child anymore. You have to go out and find what you need. If you need help, there's help available. There's tutors, they have everything you need. You just have to like go out and physically get it. And now in COVID, it's a little different, but back when we were in college, you physically had to like go out. And I remember like the most surreal moment for me was they had this like activities fair. I think that's what it was called, but it's literally like all 400 organizations and clubs on campus like are just like take over College Avenue. It's like a whole, not even a block. It's like the whole like 5 blocks down, and it's just table after table, organization after organization, and you name it. There's gaming, sports, like club sports, and then, you know, engineering, medicine, law, everything was there. And it was just like, wow, like I don't know. I just put my name down on everything because I just like was so like shook by what goes on. And it was just like complete different from Nuiaa, because at Nuiaa, you know, okay, you know all the clubs, you know all the presidents of the clubs, like everyone's your friend. Like if you wanted to check something out, like you could just go, and it's like everyone you grew up with. But at Rutgers, it's completely different, and people come from like all different types of backgrounds, all different types of ethnicities. And overall, that was probably like the most overwhelming part, was just having so much information that I just didn't know what to do with it, or what to really use and use to my own advantage. But alhamdulillah, the friends I made guided me in a lot of different ways, whether it was extracurriculars, you know, keeping up with my like studies, just having time, just breaks in between classes, having something to do other than just like study. taking those breaks, like Saba mentioned, is really important to like find time in your schedule for other things other than just class. Because, you know, when you're in high school, you're in class from, let's say, 7 or 8 a.m. all the way to 3 p.m. And then you're just like free the rest of the day and you can do whatever homework or study. But in college, it's like you'll have class at 10 a.m. and then not have class again until like 6 p.m. And you just have a whole gap in the day where you're like, I can't just like wait for my next class to study at the end of it. I have to do some work. And usually classes you'd have to like prepare beforehand, or just it's just a lot of different, it's like a different style of learning in high school than it is in college. And that takes, it's a big transition. And you're not the only one transitioning. If you're in high school listening to this, like everyone else is in a very similar boat. Whether you come from a big school or small school, everyone has their own, you know, things that they're working on. So just, you will be overwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie to you, especially if you go to school like Rutgers, but they have the resources to take care of you, and just look out for your friends. That's my one piece of advice, if I had any, is just, you know, make sure you're friends with, you know, people that you would rely on, because alhamdulillah, I'm like forever grateful that I met the friends that I consider are going to be friends for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Saba and Muhammad just said. My transition was it was very tough too. My graduating class at NUI was 17 kids. My incoming freshman class was over 15,000 kids. So it was a very big adjustment. And like Saba said, and there's everything is on you at that point, right? Like I don't do very well with unstructured time either. I didn't like, you have all these hours to study and you don't really know what to do. You're kind of just, you know, like you get plugged into this track and you just think you're following along. I think the two biggest things that if two biggest piece of advice that I can give you is number one, your friends, and number two, to keep an open mind. Um, I'll talk about the friends first. I think you need to have you need to find friends who are like-minded, who will help keep you accountable, who also you can enjoy your time with, you can also study with, right? Who will keep you on the track that you want to be on, right? I think that's a very big thing for me. It sounds like it was a very big thing for Muhammad and Saba as well. Just finding those people who, you know, like who are going to do the journey with you, who want to go through the grind with you, right? Because it gets tough, it gets lonely. The harder path that you choose, the more lonely it gets, right? You see everyone else having a good time, but you know, you have, say, an Orgo exam coming up, or whatever courses you may take. You know, there's tough times in whatever path you choose, right? Everything worth having is tough to get to. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to have friends who keep that in mind and who uplift you and need uplifting, and you uplift them when they need uplifting, and you go through the journey together. And you also need people who are currently or close to where you want to be. You know, if you see yourself being a certain type of person, right? If you see yourself, and this is whether as a career or just as a person, right? Because you need people like that who you can go and talk to, and you know, you can hear from them on what to do, and more importantly, really what not to do. You know, there's many different ways to get to the final destination, right? Everyone has their own journeys, everyone has their own paths, but oftentimes the pitfalls are the same. You know, so if you can if you have people like that in your life, and um, and the great thing about NUI being a small school is that you really know everyone who came before you, right? Or you have an opportunity to, right? And the Alumni Association's been doing events like this, and it's great because I think it gives current students and younger alumni the chance to, you know, see who's out there, who's already walked on the path that they want to walk on. So if you can talk to people like that and figure out, okay, how do I get to where you are, right? Or even if they're not where you want to be, how do I get to this point, right? You see an older person, you know, everyone's like the life journey is very similar for everyone, you know. Going through college, everyone has the same issues. Going like life after college, everyone has the same issues. So I think finding people like that in different points of your life, and also like it's so there's this concept of a ladder, right? Where you're climbing up this ladder. There's people who are on the same level as you. These are your friends who going through the journey with, right? There's people ahead of you on the ladder who've been through that point before, who are helping you up. And then there's people below you on the ladder, right, who are coming behind you. And I think you also need to really pay it forward and help those people too, right? So this ladder concept is, I think it's something that we should all understand and we should all follow. I think that's very critical. And number two, keeping an open mind. I think keeping an open mind in terms of yourself, right? Just being very introspective into, figuring out who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you like, what you don't like. Open mind in terms of just different opportunities that come your way, and I think a lot of NUI students I see now, people are really off doing a lot of really cool stuff. And I think when I was coming out of NUI, I think the school was so small, the mentorship really wasn't as much there, just because there were so few people who had gone through the journey, right? I see so many people now really doing amazing stuff, right? So whatever you want to do, I think this little NUI community, you can find people to help you, and if you keep an open mind, you'll find what you're best suited for, and you also keep in, like, don't be overcommitted to something, right? If you're going through something, don't just get there. Like, if you want to be like Muhammad's example, right? You went into engineering, you could have just gone through with it, not liked it, right? But he found something that he liked. He said he didn't like bridge building, you know. Like, it's not for everyone. Even if it comes easy to you, you may not like it, right? You have to get to a place in your life where you find fulfillment in what you do. So it's really important to keep an open mind, so you can find that path that brings you fulfillment.
Thank you guys for the advice for high school students and really college students alike. Definitely true, all valid points. As a college student now, first of all, it's so mind-boggling how fast time will fly. Once you graduate NUI, the college semesters and your blocks or semesters in professional school will just, as tough as they may be, and you'll be figuring things out along the way. But I think a really important thing, again, is to really hone in on your experiences now and see, as Pounce have been saying, what your passions are, what you enjoy, finding, great mentors, a great support system, and not preoccupying yourself with what's happening so much in the future. Just, plan what you can, and, planning too far ahead and being very unflexible about those things could oftentimes, contribute to stress that you may have at that specific moment. So yeah, just staying steadfast with what you're doing and doing the best you can. That is fantastic. So I think this would be a great transition to taking the LSAT exam applications. Let's first focus on the LSAT exam. When exactly did you take it? What were your experiences with it? How were the sections? Did you use any prep tutors or companies that you recommend? Did you self-study and all that?
I guess I could take the first stab at this one. In terms of the LSAT, I think you can take it whenever, really. I took it after I graduated. It's very possible to take it while you're still in school too. The really cool thing about the LSAT is that it's not a content exam, right? It's not where you have to study some subjects and learn the material and then go and regurgitate it on an exam. It's a logic-based exam. So it's like, basically it's almost like a lot of riddles. It's basically a test of how you think. It's not necessarily the best indicator of how you're going to do in law school. Actually, not necessarily. It isn't the best indicator of how you're going to do in law school or of how you're going to be as a lawyer, but it is what it is. I found it a very fun exam to study for. And I think what I did, I self-studied. I bought the Power Score Bible. It's a collection of, I think, 3 or 4 books. Power Score is the company that publishes them, and they have their own study schedules. So I think they break down the study schedules based on how much time you have until the exam. So I followed that. I was very diligent in my studying, in my practice exams. The most important part of studying was the practice exams. A friend of mine from college had given me this Google Drive with like every single LSAT that had been administered since 1992, and I went through all of those. If anyone wants access to that, I'm just going through this right now. You can reach out to me. I can share that with you too. That was huge for me. And then there was a website which I think now you have to pay for, but at the time was free. It was called 7Sage. So they had YouTube videos. They had a website where they basically explained every single, like all the logical reasoning questions on every actual LSAT practice test. So you could, like, logical reasoning was a logic game. Sorry, was a section that I struggled with getting in time. There's a lot of challenges on the LSAT, but I think the biggest challenge is time. If you had unlimited time, you get every single question right. But it gets tough because there's really a time crunch. So you have to learn the best practice, the best way to attack every question. And I thought that was the most amazing resource out there for me personally. Every single person who's taken the test after me, I've encouraged them to use it. And everyone walks away saying it's one of the best things out there. So I highly recommend 7Sage. I stumbled across it late in my studying, but it still helped me tremendously. If you can have access to that early on in your studying, I think it can pay huge dividends. So I think that would be my outside advice. And then just work hard at it, follow a diligent schedule. Don't overstress. When you stress about something, you tend to do worse on it than if you didn't stress. It's like I said, it's if you had the time, you do every single question correct, which means it's not the most difficult exam. You just have to learn how to work your brain in the way that they want it to work for that period of time.
Yeah, I also self-studied for the LSAT. There's a book I got called The LSAT Trainer, and I used that. And then also LSAC itself, just public, prints out books with 10 tests at a time. I just basically got a bunch of practice tests, and I did a lot of those. Practice tests are definitely the most important part of the whole thing. I didn't take a course. You can take a 10-week course or whatever before you take the LSAT. I didn't take one, but the LSAT is probably the most important part of your law school application. And it's not just about getting into law school. It's also, if you do well enough on your LSAT, you will get a merit scholarship, and it helps a lot. So if you have a specific law school that is you want to go to, or something like I said, I went to work before, between college and law school. And I was thinking more about what I wanted to do with a law degree, more so than law school itself, if that makes sense. So I wasn't really oh, I have to go to this law school. I just wanted to go to law school. So, it just wasn't really a huge priority for me to get a 180 on the LSAT. But if you do know that you want to go to a certain law school, then it is expensive to take an LSAT course, but I would recommend it because, based on friends of mine who have done the same. And I don't know if Mohammed maybe took one, but so he could maybe speak more to it. But, it is worth it in that sense. But again, it also comes down to your own study habits and whatnot. I also took it after I graduated, so I wasn't taking it while I was in school, which I think was good. My senior year of college, I was very burnt out. It was so tired, and I can't imagine. And I had already, like I said, I'd been applying to grad school and jobs and everything. So I didn't even try and study for the LSAT back then. But then when I was working, which working was also very exhausting, and it just happened to be that when I was studying for the LSAT, it was kind of slow at work. So I had the time that I needed to study for it. But just keep in mind what your schedule is looking like. Maybe if you need to block time off or build a schedule or whatever. But it is possible to do it on your own. And I think a lot of people do it on their own, but just something to keep in mind is that other perspective where it's like, if you know you want to go to like Harvard Law School, then you should probably take an LSAT course.
So I did take a power score course, and it was, I think it started like almost at the end of the year, end of my junior or middle of the junior year. So like during winter break, I took it from like January 1st all the way to like February 2nd or 3rd. And I took it because I really didn't know what the LSAT was, and I kind of needed inspiration to start studying. For me, it was hard to like sit myself down and like for 3 hours to just do work. But this course was like 3 hours every night, Monday through Thursday for like a month. And it was very helpful. I will say though, I did the most improve, like I improved the most on the LSAT while studying on my own. So don't necessarily rely on the course to like bump your grade up to what you want it to be. I will say that a lot of these courses are like very big. There's like Kaplan, Princeton Review, Test Masters, Power Score. They're just like, they hire people, and sometimes you get a good teacher, sometimes you get a bad teacher. My experience was like average. I think I learned better learning on my own. I also bought the Power Score like Bibles that came with the course, but like I also like bought the logical reasoning and reading comprehension Bibles alongside of it, because that's what I needed work on. I actually found logic games to be, like Hamza said, fun. Just like it was a time crunch, but I figured it out relatively quick. But I struggled more with logical reasoning and kind of learning how to attack those. And it's not an impossible exam. I wouldn't say it's really, you got to learn how to take the exam, and you need to be like very smart in how you schedule your time to study for it, because you're not going to pick it up in a month. I can comfortably say I don't think 3 months is even enough time, even if you consistently study at it, because it just takes time to learn to think that way when you take an exam. So I would put like about a 6 month period. And now when we took the LSAT, you can only take it 4 times a year. Now, alhamdulillah, you can take it any time, almost like every week or 2 weeks. So it's much easier to take the LSAT. So with that, use that to your advantage and schedule your time. And let's say you want to take it once and then retake it. That's fine. Definitely, try, and if you don't feel like you got the score you got, retake it. And like Sabah said, if you can think of the school that you want to go to, you can literally plug in your GPA and LSAT on LSAT's website, which is the website that you use to apply to law schools. And they could tell you the exact percentage of like what percent you're going to, like the percentage of likelihood that you'll get into that school. So, and they have the median LSAT score, and it's very much a numbers game. Everything else does matter, but your LSAT is like probably 60% of it. Your GPA is 30%, and everything else, recommendations and all your extracurriculars, is like 10%. So with that being said, your LSAT has two really big implications. One is just whether you get into the school or not, and two, how much money you're going to get in from the school. 2 or 3 points can make like a $10,000-$15,000 difference a year in scholarship money. So if that's the case, it's worth whatever investment you put in yourself to if you need a course, if you need a tutor. There are a lot of great tutors out there that I know that are in law school that did really well in the LSAT, that they go now they go back and they teach. So there's a lot of different resources, and it is an overwhelming process, but just take it step by step. Start out thinking of a timeline. When do I want to start law school? And then work backwards. If you want to start in, let's say you want to be in this year's class, you're too late, because the applications all start and they start in August and they end in, I believe in April, but I could be wrong. But I think the last day that you can apply is like March 15th or April 1st, one of the two. So you wouldn't be able to be in this year's, what is it, class of 2025? I could be wrong, 2024, but you would have to wait another year. So when you're taking your LSAT, you're going to take it so that you can start not this fall, the following fall. So really work backwards, make a timeline for yourself, give yourself enough room to study for the exam. I think that's my biggest advice is just plan ahead, because if you just start doing things without really thinking big picture, you might end up losing a year and you just like don't know what to do in that year, and you might lose the interest in law school, or you might apply later than you intended and lose out on, you know, 10, 20, $30,000 on scholarship money that, you know, that's multiply that by three because it's 3 years of law school. It's a big debt in loans. So definitely my like number one advice is just plan out ahead and have a timeline of when do I want to start? When am I going to take the LSAT? When am I going to apply?
During your applications, I'm sure it was a very, very stressful time. How wide did you cast your net? Were there any schools that you were keeping your eye out for, and why did you choose the school you decided to go to?
I applied to like a good amount of schools for law school. But so I am doing what is kind of called like public interest law, which is more, so I'm not really interested in like corporate law. I'm doing more like I'm doing immigration and criminal defense law. And so, and that was what I wanted to do. And when I was working as a paralegal at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, it was also criminal law and criminal justice issues. And so there are some schools that are like known for being a little bit like having more clinic opportunities and classes and just like a reputation of just being more focused on that type of law. Whereas other schools might be much more like business law oriented, for example. So that's one thing to consider when looking at law schools. Another big thing is obviously like the location and like the amount of money that you're going to be spending on law school, like all just the logistical things. But I still applied because with law school, it's kind of like you just need to go to a law school. So you apply all over the place. But because I went to Rutgers for undergrad, and like I said, I really loved it. And Rutgers Law School is a really good school for public interest. There's like a ton of clinics, which are very cool, like opportunities where you can basically be a student attorney like while you're in law school. And because we're in Newark, there's a lot of different opportunities for that and clients to work with, and just the faculty is really great, and the location is great because it's like in New Jersey and it's close to New York and Philadelphia and like this whole area, which I'm familiar with and which has like a great legal market. So there's like so many different things to think about. I didn't really visit schools. I didn't really do this much for college either, but I think you know, the most important thing is just to do as much research as you can. Like it doesn't have to be like literally going to the school, but I did a lot of research on like what area of law I was interested in. And by that point, it was a little bit clearer to me just because I had taken some time off and I had already gone through college and everything. If you're in high school right now, obviously you might not know what type of law, or even when you go into law school, some people don't really know what specific type of law that they want to do. So it's different for everyone. But for me, because I already knew what I generally wanted to do, it was a little bit easier to just make the decision that that Rutgers was good for me.
So when I applied, I applied to mainly regional schools. I didn't, you know, go past like the East Coast. I think the most southern school. Actually, I did apply to University of Florida, but I applied to a few schools like Rutgers, Seton Hall, University of Connecticut, and Villanova. I actually applied to Villanova on a whim. I didn't really like plan on going there. They just have so many flyers at Rutgers. And like I guess it like did something where I was like, okay, I have to apply to Villanova. And after I got like all that, you know, whatever schools accepted me, I actually did go visit. I remember I went to University of Connecticut with my mom. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and I just like I couldn't imagine myself being like in that area for another 3 years. And one piece of advice that I was told, and I think it's true, is if you don't go to a top 14 school, it's easier to get employment near the school that you go to. So for example, if you go to Rutgers Newark, you're gonna, the most opportunities for you for employment after graduation will be in that area, Newark, North Jersey, Central Jersey, even in like New York. And I didn't want to live in Connecticut. So I kind of checked that off. And then it was between Villanova and Rutgers Newark. And I remember Hamza actually gave me a tour of Rutgers Newark like almost 4 years ago now. And it just felt like home. Like it was like Rutgers, New Brunswick. It was like just a different town, but it was like people I knew, and it was like very comfortable. And it seemed like what I wanted, where I wanted to be. But I prayed a lot of istikhara, and it kind of just like for some reason it pushed me to Villanova, and my parents wanted me to go there too. They prayed istikhara and they had that same feeling. So it was just a collective feeling of, maybe Villanova was the right school for me. And Villanova is a beautiful campus. It's also like the law school is like very new. So all that like enticed me to going there. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I went to law school. I was very interested in sports law, and Villanova has like an amazing sports law program. I also, wanted to do, because I was in engineering, I was kind of told that intellectual property law would be interesting. And I met with the dean at the law school there, and I had a great conversation with Dean Rich. And overall, I just like, you take a lot of these like factors and you sit down and you look at bar passage rates, and you look at, okay, how much, what's the salary coming out of like these different law schools, and kind of what am I like, what percentage of the population have jobs afterwards. And I took a really big look at both schools, and Rutgers is a great school, Villanova's a great school, but at the end of the day, I felt that even though the one downside of Villanova was it wasn't as diverse as Rutgers, and it's something they're working on, but it was different because I went to Nuiaa, I went to Rutgers, all my friends were from different countries and backgrounds, and then Villanova's not as diverse at all. And it was an adjustment period, and it was something that I came into the school understanding. But I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to put myself in an uncomfortable environment, because in the legal profession, sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable. And it was important for me to get experience in that environment early on, so that when I go to work, it's not going to be difficult for me to handle. And I feel like it honed my professional skills, and there was a lot of benefits to that. So when I ended up choosing Villanova, it was a kind of another culture shock too, kind of like when I felt at Rutgers, just by sheer size. Over there it was just different, because I didn't have anyone I knew. I didn't have a Hamza, I didn't have a Saba, I didn't have anyone that kind of could guide me through the process. I was a little bit alone in the beginning. And we'll talk about, I guess, law school in the next stage, but that was kind of my process of how I came to choose Villanova.
So I think picking, or that whole process of applications and deciding where to go, I think it comes down a lot to everyone's individual, like personal preferences, what they want. So I think what we tell you shouldn't necessarily be your calculus for deciding where to go and where to apply. But for me, I applied to basically top 14 schools and Rutgers and Seton Hall. And then my decision was going to come down to basically what place gave me the most money. I didn't want to take student loans. I'd heard a lot of horror stories about people paying student loans very late into their lives. I didn't want to be stuck in that cycle, and alhamdulillah, Rutgers gave me a very generous scholarship, where I went to, out of all my education, NUI, like Rutgers undergrad and law school is the cheapest for me. So that was probably the biggest factor. Number two, the factor was it was local. I wanted to be close to home, and I already knew a lot of people at Rutgers. I loved Rutgers as an institution from when I was there in undergrad, and like Muhammad was saying, from his experience there, was like almost the same school, just in a different town. And so it felt like home. It felt very comfortable. I think an advantage of being a state school versus other regional schools, that state schools have that name recognition, and there's a lot of people who end up at state schools for various reasons, who then go on to do a lot of very different types of things. Like so I think the alumni made a very big alumni of Rutgers Law School was a very big factor for me too, and seeing all the different places that people end up in all the different positions, and the network that brings. That was very important for me, and yeah. So I think it was a very multifaceted decision, but I think ultimately for me, it came down to the scholarship money, and that's also why you should do well in the LSAT, because LSAT is the biggest driver of how much scholarship money you get. And you can also try to, by the way, you can also negotiate scholarships. I have some friends who've tried that, and some have been successful, some have not been as successful. But basically, you can leverage one scholarship offer against another, and you can see what schools will match you and things like that. So when you get to that stage, definitely reach out to people for more specific advice.
I actually did that with another school. I tried to show them my Rutgers scholarship and be like, bring it down, but they didn't. So I went to Rutgers.
I guess we could transition to, I guess, your education in law school, how it's structured, and one of the audience members asked earlier in the event of the difficulty of law school and what you're learning and your experiences, tribulations.
Yeah, law school is much harder than I think I realized, even though I think going in, I had heard from everybody was, people who had gone to law school always gave the advice, like, don't go to law school, which I found very unhelpful and intimidating. And and now having been through law school, I would never say that to someone. I don't know why that's such a common piece of advice. If you are interested in law school, obviously do whatever works for you. But it's if you're interested, then even if it's hard, that's not a reason not to go. But like I said, in college, you have that grace period of your freshman year being a little bit of trial and error and having room to mess up. But in law school, your first year is the most important year of law school, and you have to do your absolute best, because that's the year of grades that you get to apply to your first internships in law school. In law school, internships are a big thing. Every summer, you have to do a legal internship, and then that work experience translates into your resume for the next summer and then for your ultimate employment. So doing well in your first year of law school, even though it's a huge transition, it's a totally different ball game. There's a lot of moving pieces. You have to be ready to do well. And so that's why I really advocate for taking time off before law school. Because if I had the choice, I think I would have taken even more time off. But we also have these timelines where it's you have to get your education done and be a lawyer. But there's so many people in my classes who are in their 30s and who had different careers even before they went to law school, and who are even better prepared. So, I think it's just good to have that in mind, that your first year in law school is not like your first year in college. And it's just you have to be very ready to do well. And it's also even aside from needing to get the grades and all of that, it's good for yourself because law school is only 3 years and there's only so many classes you can take. There's only so many, clinics you can do. There's only so many internships you can have before you're actually a lawyer. And so having some kind of an idea of what type of law you want to do or why you want to be a lawyer is important. Basically, this is all to say that you have to go into law school, I think, being somewhat confident in what you want your career to look like, and being in the state of mind to study and then put in the hard work right off the bat. It kind of gets easier, I found. And again, this is also because I've spent the last year in my room at doing this all remotely. I feel it got easier, but that's also just maybe slacking off because of online school. But it does get, it's sort of a little bit of the reverse where you work super hard your first year and then things get a little bit more enjoyable and flexible as you go on. It's a little, or I guess there's so many small things about being in law school that are very specific to that. And it's so far down the line if you're still in high school thinking about it. But one thing I'll say about the law school degree, even though I think, like I said, it's important to know what you want to do generally, it is a general degree. So like, you're not going to be specializing in a certain type of law while you're in law school necessarily. You just have to take classes in all types of law, and then you take the bar exam, which covers every type of law. So you're qualified once you graduate from law school to like do whatever type of law you want to. So there's like flexibility in there, but it's just good to have like a stronger idea compared to college. Compared to going to college, I think going into law school, you need to have like a stronger sense of self and all of that.
I think law school, like Saba said, first year is incredibly important. And honestly, from we start in August until a full year is just, that first year is just incredibly overwhelming. It's a lot of material you've never taken before. I enjoyed the readings. You read a lot in your first year, but they're like stories. At least I saw them as stories. They're just like people who did things you could never think of, and they just like, it's like in court, and now everyone has to talk super professionally about like something that's like super, like there's like dumb cases, like sometimes there's dumb scenarios, like one of the famous ones, like just like fireworks that fell off a train, and like that just like caused like a big rift in the legal community, right? And so the hardest part for me was there was only finals, and at least at Villanova there's only finals, there was no midterms. So basically you're studying your whole semester and you don't know if you understand the material. There's no quizzes, no homework. You just get in lectures every single day, and you're just like reading and getting a lecture, writing notes, and everyone's talking about this outline, and an outline is like the biggest thing in law school, at least in your first year. And you literally just like sit in this like 3 hours. You have an exam that you have to take that literally determines 100% of your grade, and like 4 weeks later you find out your grades, and like that's like basically your first semester grades. And it was, until I got my grades, I swear I did not know how I did. Like did not know if I did well or like poorly, and I was just so lost because it's like you're in the dark. You don't get any grades up until that point. So alhamdulillah, like Saba said, after your first year, it gets much easier, and you get to like pick your classes. Like there's a little bit more flexibility with the class you can choose, and like what, there's a lot of different, I wouldn't call them extracurriculars, they're like journals and basically things you can get involved with on campus. And that's a whole other discussion, so we're not going to get into that. But I guess law school is really a different animal when it comes to like learning. You will like have to speak in public. Like it's not like scary because it's all in your own class. And a lot of my friends ask me like, is it How to Get Away with Murder? It's really not. It's a lot less like dramatic, and definitely not as exhilarating. It's more of just like, if you did the reading that day, you'll be able to respond to whatever the professor's asking you. But if you didn't do the reading, then you just say, professor, can I go another day? And overall, I think you'll know quickly if you like law school, because all the classes are generally taught similarly. You get like a case, and you read the case, you review it, and then the professor kind of explains what to take out of it, and you quickly learn like, okay, I just need this part of the case. That's the important part. So overall, law school is different, but it's manageable. Nothing is impossible. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. Like you need to be focused, but like I said, it's not impossible.
Yeah, I'll basically echo what they just said. Law school it's very much like the way we said colleges. You kind of, there's not much structure, and you kind of have to do it all on your own. Law school is that times 10. Like there's literally the only structure you have is your actual class timings. Beyond that, everything is on you. And the only indicator of how you really do is that grade at the end of the semester. So, and like they said, that your first year is 100% your most important year. It sets the table for everything that comes after it. So you have to go in there ready to work hard, and like you have to ready to grind. It's not easy. It's tough. A lot of like, if you want to do well, you're gonna have to put in the extra hours in the library or in your room by yourself. So I think that, but like once you get past that first year, it really opens up for you because I guess it depends on which school you go to. Rutgers has like, it's kind of like the undergrad where it's kind of what you make of it. There's a lot of different paths you can take. They have a lot of certificate programs, a lot of clinics. So you can structure your remaining 2 years how you want to. So you can really, the advice that the dean of law school gave me in my first year was, in your second year, take every class that interests you, because you'll likely never have the opportunity to take classes again. So whatever interests you, doesn't matter if it's hard, doesn't matter if it's easy. I would recommend that you take it, and you attack it with everything that you have, and really like enjoy the experience. And I think developing the cool thing about law school for me was the professors, right? Being able to develop close relationships with professors. I was never the type in college to go to office hours, or to go in front of the class and stand there for 10 minutes and chat with the professor. That just wasn't me. But in law school, especially maybe because the class sizes were so small and class participation was actually like some classes you actually got to bump up for class participation. You get like a full letter grade or a half letter grade, depending on the professor. So that kind of that being able to develop that relationship with the professors was very big for me. They continue to be like mentors that I lean on, that I can reach out to anytime. And like I said earlier, they've been through where you are, they've been to where you want to go, and they really treat you once you get to law school as not a student anymore, right? You're a student, but you're not a kid. They even professors, like the most distinguished professors, they treat you as a colleague, and I think it's a really cool experience. I really enjoyed my time, and it was, unfortunately, my last semester was all on Zoom, like 3/4 of it. So I think you guys even more has been on Zoom. But I think if you go in there, and once again, I've said this for every answer, the relationships that you make are huge. The friends in your 1L year that you make are typically, like, a lot of times they'll stay your study group through your entire college, through your entire law school career. So it's important to make those friends, and and networking is huge. I hated networking. I feel like I've gotten considerably better at it. And you have to kind of meet people, and eventually just grow your network. Learn how to develop personal relationships, even though you may not have anything in common. You have to just get good at that, and it's a part of, I guess, growing up and going into the professional world. And I think law school, if you work hard, you'll get what you want out of it.
Yeah, thank you all for your insight on your law school education. We're coming close to the end of the law school panel event, but I guess this is a wrap-up question. If you guys could just share one thing that you wish you would have done differently in your law career journey.
That's like there's probably like so many things, but I think although also, so I'll say, like, there are a lot of things that I guess like maybe would have been easier if I'd done differently. But I think something that I've learned from things that I wish I had done differently is that you can always make a narrative out of whatever it is that you actually do, and make it work for whatever opportunity you're sort of going after. So it's like, even if you, like, I did kind of so many random things in college, but like when I have to talk about it in interviews, it's like, oh, like, why did you major in like public health and then like work for the newspaper and also major in political science? It's like, there's so many things that only you can really know about, like what was going through your head at that time, or like that you can make sense of after the fact. And so even if it doesn't make sense at the time, and even if it doesn't feel like it makes sense to you, I think sitting down with yourself and like trying to create a story of like, why did I start here? And like, what did I get out of that? And, you know, even if it's the most random thing, that's really important. So it kind of turns all of your like mistakes or, you know, things that you wish you'd done differently into like really useful talking points. And it honestly just makes you more interesting and unconventional. That's always better, I think, especially in sort of jobs that, or careers that can be kind of cookie cutter. But like, I think I said this before, one thing that I do wish I had done differently was being more intentional in college about picking like my major, and just like being a little bit more flexible in that sense and more open-minded, as Hamza said.
My advice, I guess, to my 3 years ago self would be kind of, this is going off what Hamza said before, but really focusing on building relationships with faculty. Villanova's faculty literally during orientation sat down and ate like lunch with us. Like that's how willing they were to get to know us. And like Hamza said, the faculty at law school, they treat you like colleagues. And I really wish I took more advantage of that. I wasn't really big on, you know, talking to teachers after class in college, especially in the School of Engineering. Most of them didn't really, you know, it wasn't it wasn't a relationship that we could really build. A lot of times it was just like class lecture, and you know, everyone was busy with lab or whatever. So when you go to law school, your professors want to get to know you, and I would recommend like go to that networking event, even though it feels awkward. Go, you know, attend whatever, you know, panels you can. The law school, Rutgers, Villanova, all these law schools host tons of panels where they bring alumni, they bring other professionals. And just my biggest advice to myself, and I guess to others, is be, you know, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Go out and attend these events and network, and network with your own professors. Like it's not really kissing up. That's what they treat you like colleagues. Like go talk to them and build a relationship with them. And a lot of them are incredibly insightful, and they've lived an incredible life too. So that would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, I think if I could go back and change something, I think I would be like, to borrow Saba's phrase, I would be a lot more intentional with where I wanted my future to go much earlier on. I wish that earlier in college, I'd given it a much more intentional and analytical approach of where I wanted to go and how to get there. I think that, like I told you guys, it took me 4 years to decide to go to law school. If I had done that much earlier on, I think I would have had to learn less from trial and error. I think a lot of the lessons that I've learned through this journey have been through trial and error. I wish I don't know if I'd go. Honestly, I don't know if I'd go back and change things because so this is a very tough question for me to answer, right? Like, because I think that everything that you go through in life is part of your journey that makes you who you are today. You know, so if you go back, you know, like, oh, I would change this about what I did, you know, that would fundamentally change your journey. So I think for me, I think the way to answer is more of how to avoid the pitfalls. And I think that comes for me would have been if I was more intentional, if I charted a course, and if I'd kind of stuck, like, you know, followed that course and had an actual like 10-year plan. You know, this is where I want to get to. This is how I'm going to get there, instead of doing it a little bit on the fly almost. And I think the best way to do that probably would have been much earlier on, to be open to, you know, to networking with older people. And like, that's why I keep stressing to talk to people who've been to where you want to go. You know, talking to those people, being vulnerable in those conversations, that kind of sharing that, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I need help, I need guidance, because oftentimes you'll find when you're asking the questions, you don't realize it, but later on you do realize that people want to help people, you know. And I think if you're just willing to ask for help and you're vulnerable and you ask for help, people will give you the best advice that they can. So I think that's what I would have changed.
Thank you guys all for your wonderful advice, and for answering the audience's questions and clarifying some things. With this, we're going to wrap up our 2021 law school panel. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the panelists for dedicating this time to shed their insight and experiences on their law career journeys. On behalf of all the audiences in the NUI and ICJ community, we're wishing you the best of luck in the rest of your schooling and career, inshallah. Secondly, of course, thank you to the audience members that were asking questions and staying engaged. As always, please make sure to follow us on YouTube, check out our videos, subscribe to our channel, and smash that like button. And yeah, please stay tuned for upcoming NUI Alumni Association events. And thank you so much. Enjoy the weather, stay safe, everybody, and mask up.
Yeah. Thank you, Noor, for putting this together, and thank you to the entire Alumni Association. It's really cool what you guys are doing, and you know, I'm happy that I can help out in any way that I can. So
thank you so much. It's
great work setting
our
this
pleasure.
up.
Thank you.
So much. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Like I said.